My Burbank Talks presents another episode of Meet the Candidate, the show where we invite anyone appearing on the Burbank ballot in the 2024 election to join us here and give our listeners a chance to learn about their background and the issues important to them. Now, let's join our podcast.
Hello, Burbank. Craig Sherwood here with you once again for another edition of Meet the Candidate. And this time we are going a little higher up on the ladder, and we're going to talk about Congress a little bit. And with us is somebody who you probably don't know. And that's why this is a great podcast, because you're going to get a chance to meet him, to learn about him, his background, what he stands for. And hopefully it's going to help you once again when you decide to make your vote. It's good to know the person behind your vote. It's not throwing a dart at a ballot. So with us, we have Jirair Ratevosian. Jirair Ratevosian. I got it. There we go.
You got it.
And he is a Democratic candidate for the seat that's up here in Burbank. And of course, finally, our congressman represents all of Burbank. For the last 20 years, we had dual congressmen. They split Burbank into two, which I've never understood. So, and by the way, Dr. Jirair Ratevosian, absolutely. I hate leaving the doctor out because that's a degree is a very important thing that's earned. So how you doing?
It was a very expensive degree, so thanks for mentioning it. I'm doing good, Craig. Good to be with you. Nice to be in your studio.
Okay. Wow. We appreciate you coming by.
Yeah.
So we always start off by saying, what got you here? So let's go back to the early days. Where did you grow up at? And where did you first decide? Well, let's talk about, your degree is in, what's your degree in? Once again,
So I got my PhD in infectious diseases.
Okay, infectious diseases, yeah. A very specific thing.
But I was a poli-sci major in college, and I studied medicine and poli-sci. So always interested in politics and health.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. So when did you decide? Where did you grow up at? Where are you from?
Yeah.
And where'd you go to school, and where'd you go to college?
Sounds good. So I was born in Hollywood. My parents came to Hollywood in the mid-'70s. My mom's Lebanese Armenian. My dad's Armenian from former Soviet Union, Armenia. And they came and they met in Hollywood in the mid-'70s. So that's where I was born.
So we actually have a Hollywood love story that's really a Hollywood love story, not just a made-for-movies love story.
A real born and raised, person from Hollywood. And also born and raised in the district, because after a few years in Hollywood, my family moved to Sunland. That's where we got our first home. My parents took advantage of, they used to have these first-time homeowners tax credits. And I remember how proud my parents were to be able to buy their first home. I must have been 4 or 5 years old. And we didn't grow up rich, but that home was a big get for our family, and we were very proud to have that. It was a condo in Sunland, which is part of the district as well. Grew up there for about another 10 years before we moved to Chatsworth. At that time, I was going through Armenian school. I'm Armenian, as I've mentioned. I went to Armenian school, 3 different Armenian schools, one in Hollywood, one in La Crescenta, and then graduated from Holy Martyrs Armenian School in Encino. And then from there, went straight to UCLA. I was a pre-med major, also a poli-sci major.
So were you interested in going to medicine, or were you interested in politics at that time? What was your, when you first went, you walked into UCLA the first day, what was your initial, I want to do what?
Yeah, well, if you want the honest question? Yeah, the honest answer?
That's all we want here.
Well, hopefully my mom and dad are not listening. I think, when you're mostly from an immigrant family, or especially from an Armenian family, you're kind of brainwashed to either be an engineer, a doctor, or a lawyer. Those are the only noble professions. And so I had an interest, in medicine. At the time, I didn't really know what public health was, actually. So I was pre-med, but there was always this. I remember being fascinated by newspapers. I still read paper newspapers. I got the LA Times. I got the daily news, and even back then at the young age, I remember watching the presidential speeches on CNN, and so I realized that there was something interesting in poli-sci and political science, and so I may have been a little bit more interested in poli-sci, but I was a pre-med. I did all the pre-med courses. It took me 5 years to graduate because there were so many, and I came out with that dual education. Now, around that same time, I took this course called Politics and Infectious Diseases, and I remember instantly it was my favorite class.
I have no idea how somebody would have married those two together.
Right. It was the fusion of my two interests, and I learned about this thing called HIV/AIDS. And for people who don't know, the HIV is the virus that causes AIDS. It's been with us since the 80s. A big part of the Hollywood story, of course. And I learned about, at that time, how HIV is so much more than a disease. There's all these political, issues related to it, social, economic, religious issues. And I was just fascinated by that. And that's when I learned about this thing called public health. And I realized that you can have an impact on people and on human lives and on communities without having to go through medical school. And then, medicine deals with the person in front of them. Public health has a broader thing.
So instead of working on a patient, you're working on a community, on a population, on a community, we're a lot broader base.
Exactly. So I'm like, this public health thing is for me. And so after college, I went to the East Coast to get my grad degree in Boston University, where I got my MPH, Master's in Public Health. Worked for a couple nonprofits there. Really interested. That's when I got my activist training and learned how to build political power. The Darfur genocide was happening around this time, and I did a lot of work around connecting that to China and also bringing Jewish Americans, Armenian Americans together, Cambodian Americans to fight for Darfur genocide recognition. And we did some good work with JCRC and other organizations there. And then from there, of course, you're close to Washington. I got the Washington itch. I remember going to D.C. a couple times, being exposed to the House of Representatives. Fascinating. And I'm like, I've got to come here. And then eventually got a job in D.C.
Let's talk about what was your first job in D.C. then? Where'd you start off at?
So my first job in D.C. was for a nonprofit. I worked for a nonprofit doing HIV and public health work. Our job was to convince Congress to appropriate more money for public health and to fight HIV and to support LGBTQ rights. So I was not a lobbyist, but acted like someone who was going to Congress to shape policy, and I wanted to work there, Greg. I was like, this is the place. That place was so intriguing, and the policymaking process. I was watching C-SPAN when I was 20, and not necessarily thinking that I wanted to be a member of Congress. I just wanted to be part of the process, be even writing bills. I was intrigued by how you write bills. And then after a couple years of working for that nonprofit, I get a call from Congressman Barbara Lee's office. Their longtime staffer was leaving, and they wanted me to come work for them. And it was one of those calls that people don't usually get because those Hill jobs are very highly coveted. And that was my first real political job in D.C. I was Congressman Barbara Lee's legislative director.
Okay, and what did you do for her? How long were you there, and what did you do for her?
Almost 4 years. I started working on healthcare issues. I worked on foreign policy issues. For people who don't know, Hill staffers, they're usually 20-something years old. They go right out of college, or some even start earlier. And they're thrown in the middle of all of these different issues that come at a member of Congress. And, at any given day, you're working on education, environmental issues, something about public health, foreign policy challenges, depending on the member of Congress, of course. And I was legislative director, so I was overseeing all of the legislative priorities of the Congresswoman. But I was especially focused on public health and the Appropriations Committee, as well as on foreign policy issues. She was very active on global health and HIV, and then on foreign policy. Of course, remember, she was the only one who didn't vote against the authorization, who didn't vote to support the authorization for use of military force in 2001 after the 9/11 attacks. And so she instantly became involved in foreign policy issues.
That's, and, you've been around now a little bit. Now, okay, so you went from her, and what was Now, and actually went another step up, didn't you?
I did.
You had the president contact you, right? Or not maybe directly, but
not quite.
The president's staff contact you, and what was your next step?
So actually, before that, Greg, I wanted to get experience in the private sector, and I actually got a job at a pharmaceutical.
In other words, you wanted to make some money first.
Probably both. Probably both. Yeah. I still wasn't rich as a Hill staffer. You don't make any money. I had three roommates at one time, living paycheck to paycheck, trying to pay off my expensive Boston University grad school student loans, but the company that I worked for made all the HIV treatments and preventions, and so again there was an HIV connection, and in my interest in going there, it's called Gilead Sciences, California-based company. So the company moved me from DC back here in California, actually to San Francisco. Worked there for 2 years. I was in charge of all their corporate social responsibility work, mostly in Africa and Asia. So I had the opportunity to develop these public health partnerships in over 50 countries. I've been all across Africa and Asia, working with governments and community organizations. So that was a really cool experience because I learned really how the world works, and also how the private sector operates. And then it was around that time. So I did that for 7 years, and then that's when Biden didn't call, but that's when I called him and I said, I want to work for you, because it was right after the Trump, it was the Trump-Biden election, and I wanted President Biden to win because I felt that he was the only one who would get us out of that ditch.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to get into the entire, magnet, all those things with Trump and everything else, but I really believe that the way he treated COVID-19 in the early days, and even talked about just drink some bleach, or he kind of mocked vaccination. I think that set the entire country on a bad track at that time. Yeah, and
damaging for public health too. People questioning
absolutely.
Vaccines, questioning scientists, questioning the FDA
and Fauci. Now, okay, so it's been kind of brought up. Okay, maybe masks weren't necessary and things, but we didn't know that then. And I think Dr. Fauci at the time was trying to. What's the most, precautious thing we can do? What can we do? Nobody'd been through this before, So, have you met Dr. Fauci?
I have met. He's been to my home in DC actually, and I've had the privilege of working on HIV. So those of us who know him and work with him, he's one of the smartest people on the planet, and I think we were lucky to have Dr. Fauci there at that moment, translating what we knew about the science that was rapidly changing, and sometimes we get it right, sometimes we have to adjust along the way.
Oh yeah, I felt really bad for him because he started to get a real negative, and people were attacking him, and here's a man who's given an entire life to public health, and all of a sudden now he's being attacked and politicized and everything. I felt bad for the man, and
I have a funny Fauci story.
Go ahead.
People ask me, because I've been in DC for the last 8 years. That's why. As you said, most people don't know who I am here, but people ask me, how was it like being in Washington when Trump was president? And because I don't obviously support Trump or his policies, but there was often two things always happened in DC. There was always a protest happening in some corner near the White House or the Capitol, so it was very protest heavy, and especially during COVID-19 when all the attacks were happening on Fauci and science, I decided to get this big 20 by 30 foot poster of Fauci's face. And I went up to the roof of my condo building, and we draped it from the top of the roof down to the first floor. It covered the entire front of the building. And we were on a big boulevard, New Jersey Avenue. And so we'd have people stop by, honk, throw middle fingers at us. It was the whole thing. But that was, I think, my contribution to wanting to support him and science. And then eventually we had an event at our house. Dr. Fauci came and he saw that, and he was, he loved it actually.
Oh, absolutely. He says he probably has a great sense of humor.
He does.
And probably a really nice guy. I just, he had, basically politicized near the end. So, okay, so you went to work for the Biden administration. Now, what was your, and especially now, this is probably, what a hot area to be in, So,
yeah.
What were your responsibilities? What'd you do?
So I have actually, I'm really lucky because I actually met my husband because of all this. When I volunteered for him, and then they quickly put me in charge of some foreign policy groups, helping the candidate develop foreign policy positions. Then they sent me to Iowa to caucus, to help caucus for him. I landed in Iowa, just exactly 3 years ago, actually. And
so what was that like? All of a sudden now you're on a political trail, which you probably have never experienced before. And what was that all about?
So I've helped President Obama and Hillary back then doing canvassing and helping to organize in Virginia and also in Pennsylvania, but never been to a caucus. That was phenomenal. That was like a dream come true, Craig, because everything you hear about caucuses is true. You land and every home has a political sign, every restaurant has a political sign, all these news crews everywhere taking over the entire city because of the Iowa caucus. I landed and they made me a precinct captain. I'm like, holy moly, I don't know what a precinct captain does. So I had to learn quickly, and in that process is when I met another Biden volunteer at the time, who now is my husband. So it was a really good story. So did that, and then right around that time, of course, we can come back to that. But a few weeks later, that's when COVID came onto the scene, and everything went virtual. And so that was the last time I had an opportunity to actually volunteer in person. And the volunteer work continued. When the president won, I got a call to be on what's called the transition team.
Right, absolutely.
That helps the president-elect prepare for the first day in office. And I was on the national security team of that, and we did all the work related to COVID-19 and other national security issues that the president announced on day one.
Now, did you have? It's kind of been a little bit of the history is that probably not a great transition as far as help from one. Usually, everybody wants to help everybody out and be very amicable about it. I heard a lot of times this was not the case in this last transition. Do you guys have some problems?
Absolutely, yeah. This, the peaceful transition of power is a hallmark of the American American democracy.
And now we've lost the word peaceful,
and we lost all of that, the peaceful and the transition. And it took, I think, they sat on. There's some regulatory technical things the president has to sign to allow for the transition team to have access to documents and all that stuff. They sat on that for months, But the Biden transition team, we continued to prepare until they finally gave us the authorizations that we needed. It was a really, I think we forget how dangerous and scary those times were. COVID was on the scene, vaccines were not available yet. We had this very traumatic and difficult election. We have a president who Trump was denying the outcome of the election. The Biden administration had just won without, we didn't even know if Trump was going to leave on January 28th, if you remember, we were talking about. And so it was a really difficult time, and it's hard to believe that was only 3 years ago. And so when the president eventually got the authorization to fully implement the transition team, that's when we wrote all the COVID policies. The United States was out of the World Health Organization.
Right.
Remember, Trump pulled us out. We wrote the authorization to put us back in. All these things that the president did on day one, and then eventually I got a call to be able to join the administration of the State Department, and that was the kind of call that any young DC person wishes to get. And I was extremely humbled and excited for that opportunity. I worked for the State Department.
State Department means you're talking worldwide stuff. You're not just talking in the nation.
Yeah.
So what were you doing with the State Department?
For the State Department, I was working in an office called the Office of Global Health Diplomacy and HIV. It's the PEPFAR program. PEPFAR is the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, something that President Bush started. It's the single largest global health initiative ever that the United States has ever taken, even greater than the Marshall Plan. President Bush started this. I've met President Bush several times, by the way, worked with the Republicans on this PEPFAR initiative. This was a massive United States initiative to fight HIV around the world and in Africa. So I was in that office. I was the chief of staff in that office. I helped the incoming ambassador, create the new PEPFAR policies, the new Office of Global Health Security, and I also helped with vaccine rollout. At the time, the United States was sitting on 1 million doses of Pfizer that we were getting ready to ship around the world. So we were doing government engagement and all the stuff that you had to do to prepare to get those vaccines out. At the time, U.S. had vaccines, but the rest of the world didn't.
Right. Well, even then, it was hard to get these governments to accept it, and especially some of these, dictator nations to actually, want to give their citizens vaccines.
And by the way, many were skeptical about the U.S. Remember, this was a side effect of the Trump administration. They had just been insulted by the Trump administration. He called African countries shithole countries, if you remember. I don't know if I could say shithole on the podcast.
Well, I think you just did.
I just said it twice. Sorry. But when it took some time to have to restore America's credibility and image.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, because you are pretty much an expert on AIDS. Now, of course, I was around back. I remember back before we actually had a disease called AIDS.
Mm-hmm.
AIDS was a diet supplement. And I remember I was working in a store at the time, and all of a sudden we had to pull all the packages of AIDS off the shelf because of this new disease that was out. I felt bad for the company because their name just went right down the drain. But back then, if you got AIDS, it was a death sentence. Freddie Mercury, all the people that had, and I remember the day Magic Johnson announced, and I said, wow, we're going to lose Magic.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most, what a great personality, what a great person. And, forget it's just his basketball talent, but he lights up a room. But I also said to myself, everybody in the background was saying, well, there's a cure for AIDS. I said, well, if anybody can get to the cure, it's probably going to be Magic Johnson. Now, I'm not saying we can cure AIDS, but you see the commercials on television now, and you take this, and it's non-detectable. Mm. Where are we now with AIDS? Where is it? Is it still a death sentence, or of course we don't take the drugs or whatever, or where are we at with AIDS now? Where's it come to today?
We've I love this question. Thank you, because the science has advanced so much. We HIV and most people are not even diagnosed with AIDS anymore, because remember the virus is called HIV, and that leads to a disease state called AIDS, like you said. But most people, because the medicines are so much better, less toxic, easier to tolerate, most people don't even advance to an AIDS diagnosis. And
that's true. You know what? And people are naive to think, oh, it's AIDS. It's not. Yeah. HIV is just is what's in your body. But then if it's not treated, it becomes AIDS. Correct?
AIDS is what happens to your immune system. Exactly. Right. Exactly. So that doesn't happen anymore, because people who are on treatment and treatment, let's remember, is a pill a day. They actually are completely undetectable, and because the virus is fully suppressed. And by the way, this issue is close to home, because my husband has HIV, and that's how we talk about it. We don't say he has AIDS. He has HIV. HIV is in him, but he takes his HIV medication, and he's 100% healthy, and so am I. And I don't have HIV because he has the protection from the medication. It doesn't get transmitted to your partners, and that's how much we've progressed on HIV. Now, there's still people getting HIV. In Los Angeles, which is a big problem, and we can talk about that on a different podcast. But we are far from over from finishing the job on HIV, and actually that's a big one of the reasons why I want to go to Congress, because there's a lot to do on HIV and on other health issues. Okay,
well, let's start talking that. So you came back here to Burbank. How long ago did you come back to Burbank? Now, and you are a resident actually out here in Burbank.
Yeah.
So when did you come back, and then what was your itch to say, you know what, it's time not just to work for somebody in office, it's time to run for office? Where'd that come all from? And like I say, how'd you come back to Burbank? How long ago?
Yeah. So I over all my jobs, I obviously became more and more politically active, more and more involved in shaping policy, making policy. And I've always wanted to look at, when I look at jobs, actually, I don't usually apply to jobs. Jobs come to me just because of the different kinds of work that I've done. And I've always the question I always ask is, am I afraid to go into this job? And can I make a difference? And if the answer to those two questions are yes, then it's a job that I usually take. So I always want to be afraid, because it's an opportunity to learn about something. And I think the best way to learn about something is to fail, but to learn from your mistakes. And then, am I making a difference? Those are always the questions that I apply to any job. When it came to the news that that our longtime Congressman Adam Schiff was running for Senate, to me, within that same announcement, I immediately thought, oh my gosh, this is an opportunity to really have an Armenian representative in Congress. for your listeners to know, this district that Adam has been representing is about 15% Armenian. We have lots of Armenians across Burbank, Glendale, Pasadena, Tehanga. Armenians are all over. But more importantly, this district is so diverse, and we've never had an Armenian Democrat in Congress before and so that I was thinking, wow, this is a real big opportunity for us to really have an IAN. Armenians have IAN last names in Congress. And at the time, we had just had a war in Artsakh, and we were trying to get the Armenian genocide recognition happen. And I was really excited about that opportunity. And that's why I decided to quit my job. I haven't actually had a job for the last 8 months. I've been unemployed for the first time since I was maybe 15. My first job was a Baskin-Robbins ice cream scooper in the Valley, but well, I haven't had a job since that.
Actually, your job right now is being a candidate.
Basically,
so you do have a job. It's just not a paid job.
Not just a pay, exactly. And that makes it a little tough, but it also gives me time to focus on the campaign and talking to voters. But yeah, I quit my job. I came out here and established residency in Burbank, and it's been the rest is history. I officially declared, and I have been door knocking since I got out here. To learn about the issues, to learn about what's on people's minds, to get more awareness around my candidacy. I knew at the time that this wasn't going to be easy. I applied the 2-question test. Am I scared? Of course I'm scared. This is the scariest thing I've ever done, actually. But is there an opportunity to change and make a difference on people's lives? And the answer was yes, Greg. And this opportunity to serve all the different communities that are part of this district was too great. And when I looked at all the other candidates, by the time I decided, there were about 10 people who had already entered. And I remember people saying, "You sure you want to do this?" There's 10 other people who are running, and most of them are well-known people in the district.
Let's talk about this. I mean, we've got Laura Friedman and Anthony Portino, who are both elected politicians from Burbank, the Burbank area. One is assembly person, one's a state senator, and they've had a lot of years here in Burbank. How are you set? And of course we've got a couple of I call the outcasts, people who said, "Oh, the job looks sexy. It's Adam Schiff's seat. We want to go for that seat," and they're got a guy from LA all of a sudden who couldn't make it in LA. Now he's trying to come for the job, and we have an actor, and that's all great. And I appreciate all these people and their desire. But, I think we're looking for a kind of a serious politician here, especially when it comes to Congress. So how do you differentiate yourself from both, from two candidates who have a lot of experience being legislators?
Yeah, there are a lot of candidates, and it's for me, it's an honor to be part of a really esteemed group of folks. But there are big differences between myself and Portantino and Friedman and others. I'm the only one in this race that has the federal experience, and I actually think that the experience that I have in Washington is a lot more important than the experience
federal and also international.
But that's different from Sacramento, Craig. I think just because you know how Sacramento works, that doesn't translate to Washington. It's a whole different beast out there. We're lucky here in Sacramento. We have a mostly Democratic majority. It's that you don't have that in Washington. And so I've been in the trenches working with Republicans and Democrats. I have endorsements from Republicans and Democrats, supporters of mine as well. And I think that experience that I have working for Barbara Lee, knowing how to build political power through my HIV work, knowing how to be humble in not believing that I'm the smartest person in the room. My grandfather taught me humility. That's, I think, my greatest strength. Those are the things that I think will make me an effective representative, not only as a gay Armenian who represents two big communities here, but also as an educated professional who knows how Washington works. I also am not, you're going to laugh when I say this, I'm not cynical about Washington. I think Washington is, Washington's crazy, but it's always been crazy. I think the only difference is now we have C-SPAN and CNN telling us it's crazy every single day.
Right.
And so we need a new generation of leaders. We need young people to go there with a different attitude, an attitude to actually solve problems. And that's what I'm bringing that's different. The last thing Washington needs is another career politician. I know, because I just was.
Okay, well, I'm going to.
That's my case.
I'm going to throw this question at you. It's probably off our topic, but you kind of brought up about a new, and I agree. We do need a new generation, new thinking. It's worked well for the Burbank City Council.
Yep.
We have a younger city council now is a little more hip to what's going on, and they're not scared to try different things.
We have a young and diverse vice mayor. Yeah.
But what about okay, you're a Joe Biden fan, no doubt about it, but isn't he, we're looking at two candidates going to be around 80 years old now. Do you think that's the best for our presidential race in this country, or should we be looking somewhere else?
Well, I think,
I put you on the spot.
Yeah,
but,
no.
You kind of brought that up a little bit.
It's not a secret that Joe Biden is old, that President Biden is old. Of course he's old, but I also think he's the most accomplished president, probably since Roosevelt. If you look at what he did to pass the infrastructure bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, a lot of the projects that we're seeing approved here for our state, high-speed rail, all the other things, that's coming from President Biden's leadership. Not to mention all the things that he'll never get credit for, the stuff that are not sexy that I mentioned earlier in terms of the COVID response, restoring international order, strengthening NATO, fighting Russia because of its aggressions on Ukraine. These are important things, Craig, that threaten America's democracy. So I think he's one of the most consequential presidents. So for me, the age doesn't matter because he's a master legislator, and he has that experience. He recognized the genocide. I was in that room when he said, "I'm going to recognize the Armenian genocide," and he knew
that was huge.
That was huge. Presidents have been sitting on that for years.
Adam Schiff been fighting for it for year after year after year.
Exactly.
Resolutions, everything else, and finding that acknowledgement was a huge thing.
But he had the experience of 40 years or 45 years. I forget how many years he was in the Senate. A long time. To have that insight to know that the sky is not going to fall, and that's the kind of leadership that the president brings. So. Do I wish that we had a younger option? Sure, of course. But President Biden will continue to deliver, and the last thing we want is another President Trump, because that we know will be very detrimental to our democracy and to our health and to global order and across the board.
My dad actually lived 101, and when he was 99. I had to take his car keys away from him.
Really?
Oh, he was very self-sufficient, right? I mean, so to me, it's not the age isn't the definition; it's the mental acuity and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've seen, like I say, my dad was driving till 99, and I've seen teenagers at 16 get cars because you're 16, you can get a car, you get a license. That doesn't mean you should really have a car and should be able to drive. We use age sometimes instead of experience, instead of rational thought and things like that. So which we can never, you can't really test for. But so I don't have a problem really with his age as long as he's his mental acuity's still there.
Yeah, I agree. But it also doesn't mean that we shouldn't support and have if there is a new generation, like I was saying, of leaders who are ready to serve and who have the kind of experience that I do. We should be supporting them to go into Congress, because Congress, the average age of Congress is also old, by the way, and it's like 70-something. So even if I'm elected, I'll be one of the youngest members of Congress, even though I'll be 40-something. So, but younger people, Craig, and I think this is important. We're a little closer to the challenges that we're trying to solve, whether it's climate change, which is our future. Education and student loans, which is something I still have after paying my student loans off for 15 years. And so there's a generational divide on some of these issues. And by the way, also on foreign policy issues too. So I think there's a space and time for younger leaders to emerge. And we have this opportunity to elect in this district not only someone who has that experience, but also has that comes from the community. I was born and raised here. You mentioned Anthony and Portantino and Laura Friedman. They weren't born here. They came from other states. They've had a name for themselves the last 15 years.
Including Adam Schiff, though, too.
Yeah. But so my roots are deep here in this community.
Okay. So let's talk a little about platforms. About what are you? I'm sure it's going to be health issues. And pharmaceutical drug prices and things like that, I'm sure are and I will say this, Mark Cuban is able to do things with drug prices that the government's not been able to do so far. So I don't know if you know about his company or not.
Is that the one that he's importing drugs from?
I'm not sure, but Mark Cuban's a pretty smart guy. self-made guy.
Yeah.
So what are your platforms? How are you going to convince people in the district that you are the guy to represent not just health issues, but what are the other issues like housing and things like that? What else are you go there and want to go there and try to legislate
and to hopefully problem solve? Not just.
Yes,
I think one of the problems with the way people get elected these days is they go, and this is true for Republicans especially. They go and their purpose is to stop things from happening. One of the biggest challenges we have here, as you've already alluded to, is the issue of housing and the issue of those who are unhoused. And housing affordability, of course, is top of mind. It's top of mind for me now as a renter, and for my, personally for my family. And what I want to do is bring back some of the things that were so tied to that American dream that was important for my family at the time. When I think of the American dream, I think about the tax credit that I mentioned that my family was able to take advantage of to buy their first home. Sadly, we lost that home in a foreclosure because my father lost his job. But the government supported us to buy our first home. The Affordable Care Act that President Obama and Biden got through the Congress saved my mom's life. She's a cancer survivor, and the only reason why she has access to healthcare was because of the Affordable Care Act. And I got student loans, and that's how I was able to afford to go to UCLA and then to Boston University. I think those are the things that we have to protect and fight for, because the American dream means different things to different people. And but those basic fundamentals, as it relates to making housing more affordable, supporting Mayor Bass on what she's doing around the housing and homelessness issue. Congress has a big role in dedicating federal resources. I've publicly said, and I call on all my other candidates, and I hope you ask them this question if they come on your show. I've already said that 25% of my earmarks will go towards affordable housing projects, and because that is the biggest challenge that we have here. I also want to support small businesses. I know a lot of Democrats are afraid to say that they're pro small business. Absolutely, I'm pro small business. My grandfather was a small business owner in Van Nuys. Small businesses are the heartbeat of our cities, and they're struggling post COVID. Now that especially the taxes are coming back online, and I think we need to do a lot to alleviate some of the financial pressures on small businesses, and so that they can flourish and create more jobs. That's a big part of my platform. You mentioned healthcare. Of course, healthcare is one of my main issues. I think the Inflation Reduction Act that President Biden passed, that most people don't know, already is doing a lot to lower the price of drugs. There's actually
I have actually seen that.
Have you seen that? 10 drugs.
Yes.
Yeah. 10 drugs have already come down, and it just allows the government to negotiate a lower price. There's still more we can do. I want to bring my private sector experience to lower, to make it healthcare more accessible. And then I also want to focus on education. Education is another priority area of mine. I think, Craig, education, the way I see it, is the greatest equalizer. And a for-profit student loan system should never stand in the way of any student accessing student loans or being able to afford to live because they went to school. And that I know President Biden has tried to cancel some student loans. I believe I support that. I think students should be paying off some portion of their loans, but I have a plan that would also give congressional authority to cancel some student loans so that people can actually get to work and not have two jobs to have to pay their student loans. And I think we have to take the profit out of some of that repayment. So education is also a platform. And then, as you mentioned, because I've been in foreign policy and I have the internationalist mindset, and I think that matches a lot of what constituents expect, because I hear a lot about what's happening in the Middle East. I hear a lot about what's happening in Ukraine. As an Armenian, we have personally felt the pain of what happens when your homeland is attacked. That happened this past summer, or last summer, I should say, and I had a chance to visit Armenia around that time, and so we need someone who can also lead on some foreign policy issues, and I want to bring that progressive mindset to lead on some foreign policy issues.
I've often wondered, we have news every night, we have reporters in Gaza, and we have reporters in Ukraine every night, but what happened in Armenia, it seems we just have glazed it over as a nation. We don't, for some reason why is that not on our radar, do you think?
Yeah. I think it's because because we're losing in Washington. And this is what I've been talking a lot about on the campaign trail, is because we don't have a strong Armenian lobby, we don't have a strong Armenian voice in Congress or representation in Congress to push the administration or to push the Department of State. I know because I was on the receiving end, and we need to build Armenian power in Washington to be able to help support that cause, because Armenians are a big part of the DNA and the ethnic diversity of this beautiful district and this country, and Armenia-U.S. relations go way back. And what's happening now in Ukraine directly impacts Armenia. And Armenia, the country itself, has made a Western pivot in recent years, and the U.S. should be taking advantage of that because Armenia wants to come out of Russia's sphere of influence. So it's in American interest to support Armenia and to support Armenian issues, but we need an Armenian representative. I believe all communities need representatives, and I think one of the reasons why you don't hear a lot about it is because we don't have champions in Congress.
Well, I agree with that, and I think one of the as an outsider looking in, I look at our two parties, and I kind of wish we didn't have any parties at all. We just had well thought people in there working together. What's going to happen? I mean, right now, Ukraine is being, tied in with border security.
Yeah.
How do we? What's an easy way to say this? I mean, it's a very complex issue. How do we? Number one, how do you not fall in the party line? How do you say, if you think differently, are you still going to stay in that party? I mean, I think these are big issues. I just hate politicians who just all fall in the same category and vote because their party said to vote that way. And of course, there's a lot of pressures people don't know about, financial pressures and assisting with campaigns and everything else that goes on. So how do you have independent thinking and independence, voting and things like that and issues? How do you propose to do that?
I think this is probably the most important question, because this is, I think, the main difference that I bring compared to some of the career politicians that you mentioned. Because that jockeying that you're talking about will happen the minute after Election Day, when you'll get a call from whoever the presumptive Speaker of the House is going to be, and they're going to make you make promises on the phone that night. Congratulations on winning. Look, I need you to do these two things. And
by the way, I think politics is fascinating. So please, give us this inside stuff.
I've been with the person who's received that kind of call before, right? And so, you need to know how the system works, and you need to know how to negotiate a committee assignment to be able to make you an effective representative, to be able to deliver for your constituency. This is how I'm different from Laura Friedman and Anthony Portantino, who know how Sacramento works. I don't know how Sacramento works. I know how Washington works, but I don't want to go to Sacramento. And I think what younger people, I should say, is that it's a new way of thinking about how to get things done. I'm not afraid to say I want to work with Republicans. I want to work with the private sector. I want to work to support small businesses. Of course I want to, because we don't have a supermajority in the House and in the Senate, and we have to work with all parties to get things done. That doesn't mean compromising on your values. And so we have to call things out when they're egregious, like what Republicans are doing now on reversing the clock on abortion rights, on stripping away my LGBTQ rights. So we have to call a spade a spade, but at the same time, we have to work with them on environmental policies, on expanding access to health care, on passing comprehensive immigration reform. These are things that, and even gun violence prevention. There are some common sense measures.
Absolutely, gun violence.
It's unbelievable.
I can't understand how everybody says, well, it's the gun, it's the person, not the gun.
Yeah.
Well, if the person didn't have the gun, then it wouldn't be the person or the gun, So
this is another example of how a powerful lobby in Washington can really change the discourse on a topic, and we need to beat the NRA. And I think you're seeing a lot of young people come into Congress on this issue, which is really exciting, and it's one of the big issues that I want to also fight for. So what I'll bring is a different kind of thinking, and because I'm not a politician already, I don't have special interests supporting me, Craig. I don't have corporations supporting my campaign. I'm a community person. I come from the community, and I'm generally going to problem solve. And the first thing I'll always say is that I don't know all the answers, but I'll surround myself with smarter people who will help me get to the right answer and who will help me do the right thing and work with the people we need to get things done.
All good stuff. When it comes to the border and everything, huge, complex projects. I don't know how one congressperson will ever make a difference, although a voice is still somewhere to start.
Yeah.
Let's go to a little different subject here as we start to wind down. What has it been? Okay, first time you run for office. What's been the experience the first 7-8 months? How long ago did you file?
So June. So it's been about 7 months. 7-8 months.
So what's the experience so far? What did you not expect? When it comes to raising money, of course, you're finding that's the golden goose, and how is that going? I mean, what experiences did you not realize you had to figure out, and what's the journey been so far those last 7 months?
Yeah, so I think I'll write a book about this, so stay tuned. But no, I'm just kidding. It's been, it wasn't foreign to me, Craig, because I, as an HIV community organizer, as somebody who did formal campaign training before, I did all these things because I was helping other candidates, and I was helping even Congresswoman Lee in her campaigns before. I mentioned Clinton and Obama. So I've always been in campaigns. So deciding to do it didn't feel foreign because I knew what had to happen. But it's been tough. It has been a really tough 7 months because, first of all, I don't have a paycheck, and so living on my husband's support and on our savings, the grind of making calls every single day. People tell you, calling people and asking them for support. And sometimes your biggest supporters are the ones who've already given you money, and you're like, hey, can you do another check? And that's hard. But if you give people a vision in terms of what you're fighting for, that makes it a little bit easier. But the competition is tough as well. We have candidates who have millions of dollars already raised, and a lot of it is coming from special interests and corporations. We're a grassroots campaign, and I'm trying to get to half that money, and I think with half that money we will win. But it's been tough, and you just have to keep on keeping on. I think what has been great is that I have had an overwhelming support from my family, my mom and dad, who've been canvassing door to door in different parts of the community. My husband, who's out here.
I was going to ask you about your mom and dad. How are they?
Oh yeah,
are they pretty excited about all this? Is it, what's that like for them?
We didn't come from we're not the Kennedys. I didn't come from a political family. So, I think they were intrigued by the whole process. They were worried that I would, be too stressed or that my identity, as a gay Armenian would cause danger to come my way. And I've been targeted and assaulted verbally online. I heard some really ugly things about who I am, about my identity. And I think my parents were concerned about that, but overall, they were so proud that I had made this tough decision to want to run and represent this district. They're now fully on board. My parents send me emails about different events that are happening. They're watching the mail to see other pieces of political information that gets mailed. So they're all in, and then they're door knocking. They're mobilizing the Armenian community. I speak Armenian like my parents do, and so that makes it an effective way to communicate with Armenian voters. It's been great, and I think if I didn't have their support, if I didn't have my husband's support, I don't know how anyone would be able to do it. And so that's a big part, and of course my dog. I have to mention we have a golden doodle pup, and she's a secret when you walk down the street. It's a good way to meet people, and dog parks are.
Is that the truth? People love to talk about your dogs,
right? Yeah,
I have the greatest dog. We all have the greatest dog in the world, don't we?
We all do. I'm biased. Josie's number one. So I don't want to lie that it's been fun, but it's been very rewarding because I've learned a lot along the way. I've learned that just because you have the right ideas, it doesn't mean you have the right strategy to win. And but I have no regrets about any of this, and I'm very confident that we're going to win.
I know currently, in fact, one of my neighbors is hosting a get together for you. So. Are you doing a lot of those throughout the district and everything else? And is that, do you feel that's really the best way to get your message out to people? To get to, I think getting to know you, that's why we do these podcasts.
Yeah.
People need to get to know who you are in a longer conversational format instead of just, something they get in the mail. And right now, let's face it, we all get 20 things a day, for campaigns in the mail, and they become just, white noise to us after a while. So,
yeah.
So is that right now the best way you find to get out? And we will also, by the way, put your contact information below in the description. So if someone wants contact your campaign to set up a meeting or something, we can do that for you too. But how have those been going so far?
Great. Thanks for doing that. Yeah, I think what I hope people take away from this, and thank you for the opportunity to be here, is that I'm an average person. I'm not someone who is rich, privileged, or has had an easy path to any of my jobs or to Congress. And I'm humble, and I want people to get to know me, to ask tough questions, and for them to be confident, because I want their support. And those get-togethers, as you mentioned, is the best way to do that. So your neighbor has a sign up, which is really nice. It's a good way to meet people. I'm doing those, all across. We've got them lined up in Hollywood. We're doing one in Pasadena. We've got a couple lined up in West Hollywood. West Hollywood is a big part of the constituency that I'm trying to represent, because we've never had a gay representative from Los Angeles in Congress.
Okay.
And so this is the first time. And as a gay Armenian, I didn't really have any role models either. And so we're doing a lot of activity in West Hollywood. I love the voter engagement piece. Makes me so much smarter, because people are so smart. People know what ideas and solutions we need. It's about channeling them in a way that actually can make a difference, And so anytime I door knock or I'm engaging with people, I'm learning, and people are learning about my style and my ability to get results. And so those are things that we're doing. But people can reach out on our email. We're looking for volunteers for phone banking. And of course, financial support is always something that we need as well.
The way we're wrapping these podcasts up is I always give the candidate a couple minutes to say whatever he's on his mind. Why, when they go to that ballot box is it March 5th, I believe?
March 5th.
Why is it they should put that check next to your name, or hit that, or punch that card as they do in our booths in California? Why vote for you? So the floor is yours right now.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, I want people to know that my roots are deep in this district. Born and raised, as I mentioned. I am the embodiment of the American dream as the son of immigrants. This country has been so great to my family and to me, and I've always tried to pay that back through the different jobs that I've had and the different experiences that I've had to help people, the poorest, most marginalized people in our community and in the world. I want people to know that I will always be accountable to people. I won't be accountable to corporations. I won't be accountable to special interests. I will always report to people, and that's how I will always channel the way I look at different bills and different opportunities to help serve. People who know me also know that I don't just like to talk. I actually like to roll up my sleeves and get stuff done. And with me, you'll get someone who's actually a doer and who's actually will listen, will develop a strategy, and then we'll actually work with whoever we need to work with to problem solve. And when they go to the ballot box, I hope they vote their conscience and to vote for someone who actually knows how that crazy place works, someone who knows exactly what to do on day one, even before day one, and who will be accountable to them every single day. We're so lucky we've had a great representative like Adam Schiff. One thing I've heard all over the district is, "Oh, Adam was so approachable. Adam's office returned my phone call. Adam helped us with the passport. Adam helped us with the citizenship application." Those are the things that we should expect from our members of Congress, and that humility is what will stay with me, and that will help me serve our community ultimately.
Very good. Appreciate it. Well, that's it for another edition of Meet the Candidate with Dr. Jirair Ratevosian. I'm getting better at it.
You got it.
Getting better. It does roll off your tongue after a while.
A couple times, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for coming in. We appreciate it, and good luck out there on the campaign trail. And we'll see everybody again on the next edition of Meet the Candidate.
My Burbank Talks would like to thank all of My Burbank's advertisers for their continued support. Burbank Water and Power, Cusimano Real Estate Group, UME Credit Union, Burbank Chamber of Commerce, Gain Credit Union, Providence St. Joseph Medical Center, Community Chevrolet, Media City Credit Union, UCLA Health, Tequila's Burbank, Logix Credit Union, Hill Street Cafe, Bertain Escobar Wealth Management, and the UPS Store on 3rd Street.